Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time being here to listen to my presentation. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start. So right now I'm in Asunción, Paraguay. It was a very rainy, kind of stormy day today. So, but it's still very hot. So very different from what you guys are experiencing over there. So this is my presentation. I will share with you my experience working in conservation in Paraguay and what we are doing here as Paraguayan citizens. But before I start, I want to show you, this is what I'm planning on covering this evening. So you see that I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my country, and then we're going to move towards the challenges and what we're doing about it in the experience that I am going to, the case study that I'm going to present. So this is me. I am a Paraguayan environmentalist. I'm 31. I am from the LGBTQ plus community. I am very, very passionate about nature. And you see that one of the first things I told you about myself is that I am an environmentalist. I love to learn and I love sharing what I learn with people. I'm also a very good listener, and I consider myself an activist. So you can see this picture, like it's me in the times of the pandemic teaching something about nature, but this is also me. I'm also a dog dad, in case some people are too. So this is me. I live in Asunción. I work for the Peace Corps. I'm a technical trainer for Peace Corps. I train volunteers from the United States to serve for 2 years in Paraguay. But in addition to that, as a man, because I am an activist, I do volunteer work outside of my duties as a technical trainer. So most of the work I am going to share with you today is going to be related to that volunteering work that I do as an environmentalist. But before we go over there, so this is where Paraguay is. We have some neighbors. We do not have direct access to the ocean. So just so you know, we are not Uruguay, in case someone confuses the names. We are surrounded by Brazil, Bolivia, and Argentina. Those are our neighboring countries. And Paraguay, we usually call ourselves El Corazón de Sudamérica. So we are right in the heart of South America, right in the middle. So just some facts about where I live. So we are about 8 million people right now. To compare to a state in the United States, it is said that Paraguay has similar size California. We have 3 neighboring countries, as I mentioned. We do speak 2 languages. We speak Spanish and Guarani. And Guarani is a native language, an indigenous language that is also one of the official languages here in Paraguay. I speak both. Luckily, I was able to learn both languages, Spanish and Guarani. So my country has an economy that it depends on agriculture, and most of the things we're gonna talk about today are related to that system, that economy that runs the country. We are a developing country and we're known because of many very good things like nature. Some people always remember our soccer player names. We also ranked as the happiest country on earth for a couple of times. So that's very interesting. And also because of people, usually, and this because of my experience working with Peace Corps, I can tell that foreigners, whenever they visit Paraguay, they fall in love with the people in the countryside. There are also some other things that are not that good, that are things that we're known for. Obviously, there is a high percentage of poverty in Paraguay. The education system has way too many challenges. Most of these things are connected to a high rate of corruption in the country, and that also brings a lot of other socioeconomic challenges that we face, and most of them are connected to the environment. But before we go Before I tell you more about the challenges, I wanna share the beauty of Paraguay and the beauty of the biodiversity of Paraguay. Because we are right in the heart of South America, we, as I showed you on the map, we share a lot of ecosystems with Bolivia, Brazil, and Argentina. But there is one very important characteristic of Paraguay. You can see here two maps, where two ecoregion maps of Paraguay. Both of them are valid depending on who is classifying it and how much detail you want to go. You can have the one on the right, where we have 11 types of ecoregions in Paraguay, or the one on the left, where we have 7 types of ecoregion. But one important thing about Paraguay is because we're not that small compared to our neighboring countries. Someone who visits Paraguay has the chance to know a wide range, a wide variety of ecoregions in a very small surface. So that's kind of one of the advantages of visiting Paraguay if you're ever interested or have the chance. So what are ecoregions? So ecoregions are ecological regions, as the name indicates, and they are determined by the type of soil, the type of vegetation, and the type of animals that live in there. So Paraguay has this diversity, and to group them up in 3 big areas, I am going to talk to you about the area of the Chaco, the area of the Atlantic forest, and also the Pantanal, which is the biggest wetland on Earth. It's 10 times the Everglades. So if you were thinking of the Everglades as the biggest wetland, no, it's the Pantanal. So Paraguay has the Atlantic forest, which is a biodiversity hotspot. That means that some studies done in the past identified 25 places on Earth, 25 hotspots, where more than 50% of biodiversity is hosted. And the Atlantic forest is one of them. It is an ecoregion that we shared with Brazil and Argentina. And Paraguay had over 8 million hectares of Atlantic forest in the past, and only 7% of that forest remains. Most of it very fragmented and very, what's the word? Very damaged. It changed a lot because of the agriculture activities. The Atlantic forest has the characteristic of having like way too many rivers. There's an abundance of water as a resource. It rains a lot in this part of the country, and you can see, or these are all my pictures. You can see these pictures that the colors, like it's very, very green. Even though there are areas that have been deforested, there's still a lot of biodiversity that could be conserved in the Atlantic forest. This is pretty much the landscape that you can see here. The Atlantic forest is also the area where we have the biggest biodiversity in Paraguay. We have more than 500 species of birds in the Atlantic forest. We have a wide diversity of mammals living in the Atlantic forest. And also we have a lot of people living in this area. Then we have the Chaco. This is like the big contrast between with the Atlantic forest. The Chaco, which I'm gonna go back to the map just so you know. So I was talking about the Atlantic forest on the eastern part of Paraguay, and the Chaco is on the western part of Paraguay. The country is divided by a river that crosses right in the middle, and the Chaco and Atlantic forests are divided by this river. The Chaco is very, very different, and you can tell by the colors of the vegetation here. You can tell by the colors of the soil. It is a dry forest. While the Atlantic forest is a subtropical rainforest, the Chaco is a dry forest. With the vegetation itself, it's very, very different. You don't have forests that are too tall. They are mostly like shrubs or bushes full of thorns. And that's kind of like an evolutive defense that these plants develop to survive in this very, very dry ecosystem. So compared to the Atlantic forest as well, the Chaco is the area of the country where we have the least precipitation every year. So in the Chaco, there's still a huge biodiversity. and that is very important to recognize. The Atlantic forest, as I mentioned, has been very degraded in the last couple of decades, and the Chaco was not having the same situation till the early 2000s. And the reason is because the Chaco, because it is a very hard environment, it is very hot, there is no enough water for a long time. Because of the lack of resources, people were not developing this area of the country. But today, it is one of the most, is the ecoregion with the highest rate of deforestation on Earth. So Chaco now, because there are new technologies, new agriculture practices that make it possible to produce in this area and to also raise cattle, there is a very big pressure on this ecosystem nowadays. But you can tell, like, the trees are different, the plants are different, the diversity of birds are different. So if you are a birder, or if you're interested in like nature photography, you can have two big different landscapes by visiting these two ecoregions. We have migratory birds that come from the Andes in this area, and we have the jaguar. The Chaco is the area where we have the biggest population of jaguars in Paraguay. And this is a picture that I took, and I was very privileged to see this animal in the wild. And this is one of my happiest moments in life, captured in a picture. And then we have the Pantanal. I mentioned that it is the biggest wetland on Earth. It is an ecosystem that we shared with Bolivia and Brazil, and it is very different than the other two, but it's very, very rich in biodiversity as well. It's so what we have in Paraguay is the lowest part of the basin that we have shared with Brazil and Bolivia, and it hosts a high diversity of birds, especially water birds, like this jabiru on the picture right here. So Pantanal, it's full of water, and I also saw a jaguar in the wild in this area. I don't want to get your expectations too high. It is very, very rare to have a jaguar sighting. And every time it gets more and more complicated and more difficult to see these animals in the wild, because there are many challenges. So speaking of that, when we talk about the environmental issues of Paraguay, everything is connected. And it is widely known that biodiversity loss is connected to climate change, and climate change is connected to biodiversity loss, and all of the other aspects of life are connected to it. But these are some of the main challenges that we have in Paraguay. So the first one being the change of the habitat change or habitat degradation. So you see, this is a field crop of soybeans, and in most of the parts of the country, you will see soybean as the main crop that is cultivated. So obviously that brings some economical benefits to some people, but it has also a lot of pressure on biodiversity. In the early 70s, even the government was promoting the forest to be cut down, because the forest was considered as a dirty, useless area. So there was a paradigm that was very, very different than today. So now we value forest obviously more, but it is very hard to restore these degraded areas, especially if there's been years and years of crop production in these soils. You can see, like, the picture right underneath it. This is a picture from the Chaco. It is very, very common to see this type of landscapes in the Chaco nowadays. If you Google it, Paraguay, if you Google Paraguay and if you zoom in the Chaco area, you'll see all of these little squares that are destined to, they're used for cattle farming, and the darker lines are usually trees that are left for by law. It is requested that you leave these trees up, but the thing is that the fragmentation is way too high, and the Chaco ecosystem is more fragile than the eastern region. So there are studies that need to be done here, so we make sure that these corridors are actually useful. The two pictures in the middle, so one of them is, and every year this is increasing, the forest fires. This is another problem that we're having a lot here, and this brings habitat loss. Like in one day, you can lose millions of hectares in Paraguay nowadays. So it is a very big challenge that we have in terms of environment. The picture underneath that is a very, sadly, this is a very common picture that you get when you visit the main rivers, those that we share with Brazil, Bolivia, and Argentina. And the reason is because there is a very bad waste management system at a region level. This is not only a Paraguay problem, it is a problem at a region level, and it is affecting multiple water ecosystems. Then we also have a huge problem with pollution. And because we do have a very big systemic issue at a government level, and we're talking about corruption, like lack of education of people making decisions, we have a lot of people getting away with this type of situations and not being actually punished or stopped. So the picture over here is one that became very, very popular because Leonardo DiCaprio shared it on his Instagram, I think. And it is one of the lakes that one day was completely red. And the reason was because there was a leather factory right next to this lake, and they were taking like their effluentes straight to the water. There till today, no one actually took care of this lake. It is not red anymore, but that's because of the natural processes, but it's still very, very polluted. And we have many, many cases like this where there is no accountability for people that do these type of things. And the last picture is climate change. I was telling you that today was a very rainy day, and every time there is a more extreme weathers and infrastructure is not prepared, and then because we have these waste management issues, like all of the waste is just like taken to like the rivers. So it's a very complex issue. And we do have a lot of these issues in other parts of the world as well. So I'm not being pessimistic here. I'm just sharing one of the main challenges that we have in Paraguay. So I mentioned that I am an environmentalist. I studied environmental engineering. And when I was at university, with a group of friends, with a group of those friends that really wanted to do something when we were already students, we started organizing a volunteering program that was only for students of our same career. And this program was very successful, and we ended up creating an NGO. So I am going to share with you now. And I put it as what I do, but it's actually what we do with this NGO. This NGO, it's OPADES, as you probably saw in my Zoom name over there. We were founded in 2015. And the reason we were founded was just to continue doing this summer volunteering program in protected areas. But we noticed in the first couple of years of the organization that there was so much to do. We did have a lot of organizations working in the environmental field in Paraguay, but there was this niche that no one was actually working on, which was civic participation. That work of giving people the chance to do something about the environment situation and not give up and feel frustrated and depressed because of the current status of the environment. So we're giving people a chance to do something in a very structured way. So OPADES nowadays creates a very solid structure for people to join. It could be for a week, it could be for a month, it could be for a year, but our work continues. So that gives it sustainability as well. So I'm gonna share with you some of the projects we do in OPADES. So the first, and we love logos. Maybe this is something very unique to our organization. For some reason, every of our programs has their own logo, but the organization itself is OPADES, and OPADES works on these areas. So the first one being protected area management. I talked to you about the 3 main ecosystems that we have here, but there is a very small percentage of those ecosystems that are being legally protected. And if they are protected in paper, there is usually no one taking care of them. And if there is someone taking care of them, there is usually not enough people to do the work. And if there is least people there, they don't have the resources. So there are a lot of challenges that comes with protected area management. And that starts with not having enough resources to hire rangers. It comes with not having enough resources to get the rangers to do something in the areas they are protecting. So we identified this niche back in 2013 when we started the program. And then for 2 years, we did this volunteering program that was very, very successful. And that's why we created OPADES. This first logo here, where you see PAVAP, PAVAP, this is the reason we created OPADES. This is a program that still runs till today. It is a very, very successful program. And I heard in the US, you have similar programs. I think in Colorado, at least we connected with a bunch of them. I think there is volunteers for Colorado Outdoors, and there are other similar programs. But it was the first one in our country. And it gave university students a chance to put in practice what they were learning. It gave people the chance to participate in activities and learn more about protected areas. And we have impacted the management of protected areas in a very positive way. And we're keeping track of those impacts that we have in protected areas. Then we have sustainable tourism as one of the other projects that we are working on right now. And this specific project, the Leadership and Sustainable Tourism School that we created in one of the regions of Paraguay, has the support of the Inter-American Foundation. I think it's a government agency from the United States. So we were also very lucky to be accepted for that donation. We are starting in 2019, then the pandemic began. We started also working on youth advocacy. We realized that as youth, we were not being taken seriously because we were like young professionals starting working in the field, and there was an intergenerational issue there, especially because people were not taking us seriously. And we also realized that no one knew how to actually do things for the environment. There was no involvement in any decision-making processes. There was no involvement in the international conferences and of the United Nations, for example, where huge decisions are made around biodiversity conservation. So there is this global biodiversity network that has some national chapters, and OPADES is hosting the Paraguayan chapter of this biodiversity network. So it's the Red Paraguaya de Jóvenes por la Biodiversidad. We are also very proud that we had Paraguayan youth participating in the last COP in Montreal, Canada, last December. And that's also one of a milestone for us. In all of the other programs, we do a little bit of environmental education because we train our volunteers, we train the rangers we work with, we train the communities we work with. But now we're also working, we're targeting local communities, kids from local communities, and we're doing environmental education with kids that live around protected areas. We created this program that is called Guardianes del Parque because we realized that if we want to stop the pressure of the community surrounding the national parks, we need to work with people. We cannot just get inside a park, count the birds and measure the growth of trees, but we still have so many social and environmental issues outside. So we started targeting the communities. We started working in environmental education with kids, and also, and it is more connected to the last logo that you see here, we are promoting birding as an activity, as a hobby for youth in the community, also as an income generating activities for community members if they want to become birding tour guides. And because birding, it is a fantastic tool to do advocacy, environmental education, and it changes people's way of like seeing nature. So these are the areas that we're working as OPADES. So you have an idea where the places we work are located. This is a map, and I am going to see. So the first one, where you can see it's in the Atlantic Forest. It's the Ubucuy National Park. This 5,000 hectare park is where we started our volunteering program back in 2013. This is the reason we created OPADES, and we continue working very closely with the rangers nowadays. Our work has evolved, and I want to say that Ubucuy, when we started, it was a national park in paper, but people didn't know it was a national park. Because we're a very hot country, usually during the summer, we want to escape the heat, and we want to find a stream, a river, and we want to get inside the water. But unfortunately, that came with a very bad practice of people visiting these areas, not managing their waste. So there was a lot of littering inside this national park. We had people sitting with their chairs inside the water. They have their coolers with alcohol. They had their grill right next to the river. So there was not a very good management of tourists in this national park. So at the beginning, we did a lot of trash pickups, and that was our main work for our main job for 2 or 3 years. But then we ended up controlling that. We supported the rangers in their management plan process, in the creation of their management plan. And nowadays, alcohol is not allowed in the park. It was never allowed, but because these areas were never managed correctly, no one was actually keeping track of that or controlling that. And it sounds like very obvious, but believe me that the idea of a protected area and the understanding of the importance was not that obvious for people because of those issues that I mentioned to you before, which is like the lack of education, a very like vicious cycle that continues that we're trying to break. So that's Ubucuy National Park right in the middle. We also work in urban protected areas to do environmental education, especially around environmental holidays. We have to acknowledge that we do use environmental holidays as big events to promote environmental awareness. We have worked in the Chaco, and in these protected areas, we do more because the Chaco is less visited by tourists. These protected areas usually don't have issues with waste management. Their issues are more related to monitoring biodiversity, to avoiding like hunting and some other types of the exploitation of the parks. So we've been working more on biodiversity monitoring in these areas, and also in the Pantanal. So you see the one here on top. This is in the Pantanal. And then we have also worked with private protected areas, which is one of the ways we've found to make our work also sustainable. We've been partnering with organizations, and there are also huge companies that own protected areas, and we are nowadays providing them services as an organization, doing environmental education with their communities, doing their biological monitoring, etc. And then the Ubuturusu right in the center here is where we do our sustainable tourism project. This is one of the most developed areas in terms of tourism. And because of that, we realized that people are aware that the main attraction in these areas are the natural resources. And we are supporting them in making those and that development more sustainable, especially focusing a lot on environmental ethics in terms of sustainable tourism. So let me move forward. I have this very short video that shows, I've been talking a lot, and I just want you guys to see a little bit of my group in action. So let me play this. And this is one of our favorite phrases. I don't know who said it first, to be honest, but we do believe that everyone doing little things in different places are making the change. Oh, so on the video you saw some kids, like the first scene was some kids, and that's our environmental education program. Just wanted to mention that this is a logo of that program, and there is a very cool story behind this logo. And some people think this is a jaguar, but it's actually a baby puma, a baby mountain lion. And because of our volunteering program in protected areas, we were able to register. We found footprints first, and then we were able to capture it on our trail cameras after 20 years. And this was a very, very cool moment for us. We were able to register a mountain lion inside this national park. And the main thing was we were not able to tell people that we found this mountain lion. We wanted to yell into the world, but the thing is that this could bring a lot of issues for these species, especially because surrounding communities could see it as a potential threat. So we thought that creating an environmental program where the mountain lion was the image could start raising awareness in the little kids, in the family members of these little kids. So that's kind of like the reasoning behind this logo. So we really try to do every one of our projects with a lot of passion, and because we're a very big group as well, and that's a very important thing to mention too. OPADES is legally established since 2015. At the beginning, there was only 9 of us, the founders, and then we decided that we needed to open up the organization to more people. And today we are more than 90 members that are part of OPADES. We have a network of more than 700 volunteers that participated in our different programs. And nowadays, we are also focusing on community members. For a long time as well, it was university students from the capital cities traveling to these parks and doing the work and then leaving the communities. But starting in 2018, we started inviting youth from the community members to join our activities. And today, we are also not working alone. We have the support of different organizations, and through the support of WWF, we're also bringing indigenous youth from indigenous communities to these programs, so they can see a different ecosystem. They can see that they could be key change makers in their communities, and we get them inspired by participating in these type of programs, and where they not only get to work, but they also get to know other youth that share the same interests as them. So we work very closely with the Ministry of the Environment. I know it is their responsibility. Most of the things we are doing, someone can argue that it's their responsibility, but we cannot wait for them to be able to do the things. So we are taking the initiative, and luckily we are growing a lot nowadays. There is still so much we can grow. But we do have the support of very important organizations. Yeah, so these are some pictures of our volunteering work in Ubucuy National Park. You can see here that in the first 2 pictures are our volunteers doing biodiversity work, like field work. They are doing an herbarium. They're doing a list of birds of this national park. We have started even like research topics with our volunteering programs. Now we are studying the effect of the noise made by tourists in the presence of birds. So we're like measuring the correlatividad of these 2 variables. We work very closely with tourists, and we do maintenance. We build trails. We create the signage for these trails. We develop a whole environmental interpretation design for these trails in a way that each trail tells you a story, and it's not only a path to get to a final destination. It's telling you something, is translating the language of nature to people. Yeah, we do a lot of this type of work. We have also, I think one of the other big successes or impacts that we're having is obviously in the participants, the youth participants, obviously in the tourists that get to be educated by our volunteers or trained by our volunteers, but also the park rangers. And because of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning, corruption, lack of education, lack of resources, etc., park rangers are usually hired to only be like security guards of protected areas. They're not really trained to do wildlife monitoring. They're not really trained to talk to people about the environment. So through our programs, we're also impacting these park rangers a lot. So yeah, that's what I have as a presentation. I think there is a lot more that I can tell you, but I think we could leave it to the Q&A part now.
Well, thank you so much, Cristian. That was wonderful, and it's so inspiring to see young people involved and and picking up the work. And I love the quote about small people in small places making big changes. That's lovely. So we have a few questions in the Q&A. Please, other people, add yours in. And this is something that struck me actually when you were introducing Paraguay. Is how is it that it has high levels of poverty and corruption, yet the people there are some of the happiest?
I was the first one asking myself how on earth we ended up getting that first place. But I guess I never got to the actual methodology of this study, but I do acknowledge that even though people are going through challenging situations, they don't have their basic needs met, they are still very willing to help you. They are I think there is a lot of value on kindness and sharing and just having a chill life, especially in the countryside. And I don't think people I don't think there is too much poverty in the countryside. People do live very well with lower resources, but they live tranquilo. And I think that's probably, and I think we're also known because of the tranquilo pa factor. We have this culture of not rushing up on time. We don't worry about getting on time. We value relationships more than work. We're very collectivists. So it probably goes that way. I don't have the exact answer, so I'm just giving my opinion around that.
That's lovely, and so much to contemplate. That it's not about acquisition, but it's about sharing. And generosity of spirit and of resources. That's a wonderful thing. Kind of like the library, but anyway. So, and somebody wondered, what does OPADES mean? Is it an acronym of a lot of your organization?
It is an acronym. It is an acronym, and this is. I'm just thinking of this right now. I told you because we are considered an organization run by young professionals. When we started, we needed to have this name that was very serious and formal. So it took us a while to decide on the name, because we already had this volunteering program that was very successful. We already had a team working on that, but we were stepping up, one level up, and we had to be very careful in choosing the name. And I know that the whole name doesn't sound that, it's not fun. Organización Paraguaya de Conservación y Desarrollo Sostenible. It's basically the Paraguayan Organization of Conservation and Sustainable Development. luckily we were able to put it together as an acronym. So OPADES sounds a little bit better than the whole name. But I remember we were talking for hours about what the other organizations would think of us based on the name we chose, what other organizations would think of us, or the government organizations would think of us, because we were like, you know, just youth getting organized. But it turned out to be cool. I think I'm very proud to say that nowadays OPADES is up there with those NGOs that were our inspirations at the beginning. And luckily we have a very good relationship with them as well.
Oh, sorry, the lights on my office just turned off. Sorry.
You should move. It's like with the sensor.
Yeah, I need to get up and stand or something. I kind of like the lighting. Anyway, any other questions, anyone? Noel, do you have any questions?
I do have a question. I was going to ask you, you were talking about birding and bird conservation and the study on noise levels. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened, less plane travel, fewer tourists. What did the pandemic do to make your work harder or easier? How did it impact your organization?
Oh man, we had to work a lot on our like sanitary procedures and protocols to keep people, you know, safe. Fortunately, we didn't cancel our volunteering program. Obviously, in the first couple of months during the pandemic, we weren't doing any field work. That was the time for us to get organized and prepare. But I remember that when we went back to the field, the park was, it had been around 7 months of that the park was closed to the public. And on the first field work that we had, we found the footprints of the mountain lion. So that we obviously kind of like connected that to not having tourists for more than 7 months. By then we hadn't started the noise research yet. We started it actually after the park opened up again. So there are some university students doing their thesis around this research. I don't know the results yet, but they're using birds as an indicator for whole biodiversity. So they have this like sound measuring equipment, and they have these points where they go and they stand up for a good amount of minutes to just listen to the birds that are around them, and they make these lists, and they do this in different spots where we have more tourists. They do it in the trails that are more visited. They do it in the trails that are like usually not very visited by tourists. So they're trying to compare the impact of the noise. I don't know if I answered your question.
Definitely. I know that we have quite a few avid birders here in Vermont in particular. One of our upcoming First Wednesdays events is actually about birding.
Oh, that's very cool.
Are there any, this is just kind of an off to the side question, are there any migratory species that make their way as far up here?
Yes.
From down in your neck of the woods?
I'm not sure if exactly from Vermont, but for example, the Mississippi kite comes from like the southern part of the US. It's in this area right now. So that's very cool to see. We have the osprey that also comes all the way from the north of America. And we have the cuckoos, the yellow-billed cuckoo, the dark-billed cuckoos that are also migratory, and the shorebirds. Those are even like more impressive because they come, and I'm pretty sure from Vermont too, because the literature said they come from Canada. So I guess they pass through your area at some point. So yeah, that is very cool to see how we're still connected. That what we have here somehow makes it possible for you to have that bird too, because if we lose what we have here, they will make it back there. They won't find food and they will die here, and then and vice versa, right? So it's very cool to see how we're connected. I was gonna say, if we start, I don't see any other questions here, but I wanna like talk about my experience as an activist and starting an organization in Paraguay. Obviously, at the beginning, we didn't have a very clear north. Luckily, we decided to create the organization back then, and we do have a lot to do. But there are some challenges, obviously. One of them was transitioning to a for the first 5 years of the organization, it was all volunteer work. Till today, I am still doing volunteer work as a board member, but luckily we were able to hire people to do the more like field work. Now we have a team, we have an executive director, and she has her own like team of technicals, and each like team member has their own volunteering group. So we have a bunch of like volunteering spheres doing different things. But it took us a while, and one of the reasons is because, and I think this is worldwide too, that when we talk about financing the work, the environmental work around the world, a lot of people think of targets. Okay, so we need you to plant this many trees, and they give you the money to plant this many trees, but they never worried about who is going to do the project. But very recently, we were able to identify donors that actually cared about strengthening our organization, giving us the chance to create a structure, hire people to continue doing the work. Otherwise, it's just like some volunteers doing the work for bigger organizations. Is that we realize that's not really fair. But yeah, we're growing. We still have a lot ahead of us to do.
Well, thank you again so much for spending the time with us. We hopefully will take care of our area up here as well, so that the birds can continue to make their exchange trip and come and visit us in the Green Mountain State.
I would love to visit, and I don't know exactly who's listening right now, but obviously, if you ever visit Paraguay, contact me. But if you could volunteer, you could be a volunteer of our organization. If you have your organization in the US, if you're doing something similar, we could like exchange experiences. Like, please contact me, contact our organization, and that's something we're actually putting together now with an organization in Colorado. And so we're gonna do an exchange. You have Peace Corps as an opportunity as well. We work closely with Peace Corps volunteers in the field, and Peace Corps is a great way to also work with community organizations as well. So there are ways that we can keep in touch. Go to our Instagram account, go to our website, check our reels and videos. And maybe you'll decide to come down here.